so there we go. Yeah, my name is Ben Rossow, and super excited to be here. And this is a pretty cool event, I would actually say, because it's actually the first repair expo that I think a lot of us have been to. I've been to the Pre-Pet Expo most recently. Kind of hard to make connections there, and then also CTIA, which is not as tangible as a repair expo. But for everyone here, who's here for the first time to an expo? Nice. Okay. Cool. So nearly everyone. That's awesome. So one thing I want to challenge everyone to do is to reach out to somebody that maybe you've seen on Facebook or maybe someone that you think is approachable, and just get to know them and just say, hey, I run a repair shop. Do you? And they'll probably say that they do, right? And then just kind of trade names and shoot them a message on Facebook and get to know them a little better. And one of the things that you can really create that can really help your business a lot is to create the friendships that you can carry on throughout time. That's exactly who here has ever heard of Jesse Cruz? Okay, cool. So there's quite a bit of people. So actually, Jesse, I met him through Facebook. He'd actually posted on Facebook and asked about how to answer some customers, something like that. Someone emailed him. And I messaged in the comments, and it just trailed into a messenger conversation, and then pretty soon we started messaging each other more often, and then just created a friendship, and then pretty soon I invited him to be a coach inside of my program, and so now he's the lead solder coach inside of my ProFix or Repair Shop Accelerator program. So that's one of the things that you can definitely do. And so I want to challenge everyone to do that. Go meet somebody and take the intentional initiative to shoot them a message. Exchanging business cards is good, but I can tell you they just get wadded up in the pocket and probably washed once you get home, and you'll really forget, who they were. But if you shoot them a message, it'll be in the top of your messages, and that right there is literally just a simplified system that can really create the great connections that can last a really long time and really create those really nice relationships that can be great, because it can be really lonely at times being in the repair industry. You have your shop, things can go good, things can go bad. It's really nice to have someone you can bounce stuff off of. So as far as today, one of the things that they wanted me to speak on is micro soldering. And that was kind of the topic. And then I was like, well, let's do a different twist on that. If we can do how to maximize profits of micro soldering through simplified systems. And in our program, that's one of the things that we really see is kind of the big differentiator is the people that are able to establish a system that micro soldering can exist within are the ones that can create a scalable business that is then able to really bring the profits and be able to hold the cash versus just kind of be that churn where it's that extra hat that you wear. It's that extra late night repair that you stay to do where you have to tell your spouse, hey, I got to stay 2-3 hours late tonight to finish up the repair. And you're sitting there clueless, frantic, don't really know what to do. And at the end of the day, you're not really making any more money because there's no system for that to exist within. Who here does micro soldering in your store? Nice, okay, cool. Who here does not, but wants to? Okay, very nice. Got a handful of people. So kind of reiterate that, micro soldering can only thrive profitably through a simplified system. One of the things that we see a lot with businesses is it's kind of like the time value calculator. So each and every single day, I hop on calls with people, and one of the biggest things that I see is, and the purpose that I hop on the call with them is to talk to them about a program, to get them in and to teach them micro soldering or to help them improve their business operations. And so one of the things that we see is we invite them to hop on a Zoom call with me, really just make sure their repair shop is a good fit for our program, because we work with everyone for 3 months, which is a really long time. So we really want to make sure it's a good fit and that they can actually leverage, what we do teach. And one of the interesting things that a lot of people, not a lot, but the big red flag for someone that is just really burnt out and reaching out to micro soldering is that last straw to try to fix everything, is they'll say, do you have anything later in the day? Can you get on a call at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night? And I'm like, no, that's when I'm at home with my family, and they're like, well, I'm too busy. And it's kind of like the trophy that they then try to tout where they're like, man, I'm too busy. I can't hop on a call earlier in the day. It's like, well, what are you doing all day? It's like, well, I'm helping a bunch of customers. I'm like, do you have employees? And they're like, oh yeah, I got 3. I'm like, so you got 3 employees and you cannot hop on a call for 30 minutes. Like what's going on here? And you get to talk with them, and they have this trophy mentality of where they want to tout how busy they are, how many employees they have, and just really how much work they put in, how many hours they work late into the night. And I'm like, that's no trophy that I want to, tout, but it's a trophy that everyone, touts. But the time value calculator with that is I look at it and I'm like, those people that just extend the hours in the day that they work, they're leveraging time. And time is finite. Time, you only have 24 hours in a day. And depending on the other activities that you have even less. But the other aspect of that is you can either leverage time or you can leverage value. And that's really where the systems come into place. If you're able to leverage your value upon that time, then your business can then become extremely profitable, extremely scalable, and extremely like a pleasure to run. Like you are not sitting there just counting the hours in the day. You're literally counting your effectiveness upon the time that you're working. And that's one of the really big distinguishing differentiators in business that we see. But my main intention for today is that we can create some actionable steps, that you leave here with a clear vision, and that you have confidence to take action. The biggest thing is I want everyone to have like a clear vision on how they can reduce the struggle with trying to leverage time and exchange that instead for how to leverage your value upon that time. So, and one thing I want to state, there's literally no one way to run your business. Businesses are in all, sizes and shapes and everything like that. There's literally no right way to run your business. But the thing is, you need to run your business how you would like. And the biggest thing with that is how you like, but not how you're obligated. That's one of the biggest thing that I see is a lot of people say, well, I like to work the late hours. I like to be, head deep in repairs all day long. It's like, well, maybe you like to, but when we challenge you to do that, like to take a day off, and they say, well, I can't, my business will fail. I'm like, okay, so you don't like it. It's coincidence that you like it, and the activities at hand kind of coincide with that, but really you're obligated to be there. And whenever you're obligated, you lose choice. And when you lose choice, you're no longer making those decisions because they're being made for you. And that right there is no business to run because, if you had a regular 9 to 5, you could, somewhat choose your schedule. You could somewhat choose the vacation time that you wanted to take off. You could, somewhat choose your pay by going and asking for a raise. But a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we try to make these excuses and say, well, I like to work the late hours. I like to do this. I like to do that. But really, we're just obligated by those things when we literally had no choice in the first place. So I want to share just a little bit about me. So this is me currently, and that's my wife and my beautiful daughter Flora, and then Francis and Leo. And so I have a beautiful wife and 3 amazing kids. And I have 2 thriving businesses that run on systematic delegation. And it's been an absolute joy. At this point, we're going to get a tree right now. Apologize. But it wasn't always this way. It was I was literally working 24/7 whenever my oldest was born. And whenever he was born, I took on the idea that I need to work even more because a good dad puts in more hours. A good dad spends all that time at work in order to make a better future for his kid. But the thing that I missed out on a lot is I would leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, come home at 8 o'clock at night, and then I would sit on my computer trying to find that one thing that's going to turn my business around, that one thing that's going to make my business profitable. And including, I went to CTIA many years ago when I was in Vegas, and that was like my one chance. I remember going there and just utilizing my credit cards. My account had no money in it, and I was like, you know what? If I can just talk to this you guy that's selling prepaid, put that in my store, and all of a sudden I'll be making money. Like it'll start working again. Maybe I can go buy some cool cases. These are really nice. These have some cool designs on them. I'm gonna go jack up a credit card and do that. I remember spending a couple $1,000s there as like a last ditch effort to save my business. And maybe some of you here today are in that same position, and maybe you're not. I hope not. But the Small Business Association statistics show that there's many people sitting in this room that are probably going to be going out of business or probably already out of business. Just you're leveraging credit cards until they run out. And that's one of those things that with myself is now I do have complete choice. However, it wasn't always that way. And so I want to introduce you to to Ben 1.0. So this guy right here was actually featured in Recycler magazine. It's an international toner and ink magazine. And we actually teamed up with Cartridge World and got featured there. We won numerous Locals Love Us. It's like a local award thing. And on the outside, I had 2 stores. I had 4 employees. And if you have all those things, then you're looked at as a great leader. And I had a supposed thriving business. And it made it really nice for Sunday dinner conversations because people would ask, "Oh man, Ben, how's your business going?" Like, man, I got 4 employees, probably gonna hire another one. And you're like, man, I got 2 stores, looking to scale and open to a 3rd. And you're sitting there, you're like, man, like I literally have no money in the bank. Like, but it's gonna change though. I'm gonna put in a couple more hours and figure this out. I'm gonna hire another employee that's maybe, smarter than me because people say, spend all your money to make money, and I spent all my money. And then they're like, hire people that are smarter than you, and so I just hired people blindly because they, gave me a good sales pitch during the interview. And that never really worked. And it was like this horrible way of doing business, but I thought it was good because I was like, man, I'm a good dad. I'm putting all this time to be with my business to create this, legacy for my children. But what they did not see was $84,000 in IRS debt. That happens if you have 4 employees and you don't ever pay payroll tax, actually. And so warning to everyone, they'll lock up your accounts really quickly. So if you have not paid taxes, make sure you don't tell them you're not paying taxes until you have saved up enough cash to hold on the side. Lesson learned. Because immediately once they do, they'll send you a lot of letters, and you'll have like stacks of 15, 20, 8 letters coming in, and they're all certified. So someone has to sign for them, which is usually like your employee because you're sitting in the back crying because your business is like falling apart. And they come back there and they're like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" You're like, "Got these letters here from the federal government." And you're like, "Yeah, thank you." Like, you're looking like, are these like identifiable on what they are? Like, yeah, they say federal. Yeah. Internal Revenue Service. And I was 6 months behind on rent. But the thing was, I was previously a year behind on rent, but I took out a $40,000 PayPal loan, and then took another $25,000 PayPal loan and then paid back my back rent. So that's how I was only 6 months behind. So that's kind of a win. But then it gave me a lot of debt there. And in the whole process, I still couldn't pay myself a paycheck for years. My mother-in-law, luckily, she lives like 5 minutes away. She'd bring us. She'd bring us dinner every single night, but at the same time, I know there's so many people out there that are in that same position where they call it bootstrapping, where they use all the cliche phrases, where they go to share, the motivational picture of the lion, saying all this, business stuff. And like, no offense to anyone to share that, but then eventually what's going to happen, they're going to share that one Facebook post where it talks about how business causes extreme anxiety and all these things, and it looks like some kind of medicine disclaimer for like mental illness that you're going to get caused by business, and I'm like, that's no way to run a business. Like, and so the best thing that I think that ever happened to me was I went out of business, like legitimately. I couldn't pay my bills. All my employees walked out. We closed the second location, and then begged the landlord out of rent, which luckily, we got out of rent. Probably because he couldn't understand what I was saying on the phone and I was crying, and so he's like, just get this guy to my so yeah, it was a pretty rough time. But one of the things I want to share is like the big difference between Ben 1.0, which he has a cool picture at work. This picture was actually taken because I was featured in the local newspaper for like a featured small business. They were like, "Man, you got a real business. Like, you used to open your second location. Let's take some pictures." I'm like, "Oh yeah, like this picture is gonna make me some money. Like once this goes up, like money will pop on my bank account." It never did. But I remember going to the bank and discussing with one of the tellers. I'm like, how far in the red can I go? And she's like, "You can go $3,500." And I'm like, it's like, I shouldn't have told you that, but you can. I'm like, so I always knew how to pay my bills, where you pay all the small ones first, you pay the big ones second, and then your bank account always clears. It's pretty interesting process how to do that. But the problem with being really bad at business and being delusional is you become really good at coping mechanisms to make a really crappy business exist versus holding cash and creating a system and creating a business that's manageable. And I don't want to ask if anyone relates to Ben 1.0 because I don't think anyone raised their hands anyways. But as far as what I described earlier, as far as everything that I got going for me as far as Ben 2.0, who here would like to follow that same kind of trajectory? Would that be something that would be like appealing to be like the Ben 2.0? All right, cool. There you go. Yeah, so you don't have to be me, but yeah. Oh, and the one cool thing I want to say about this is so Ben 1.0, you see his hair is really long. That was like one of those things. I actually grown my hair out, and I think that was like the only thing that kept it together at the time because I donated like 32 inches of my hair. But so that was like one of the really cool things with that. And that was like the only good thing that I had going for me at the time because I didn't see like all these little people very much at all. I worked 6 days a week all the time, made no money, and now I work less than ever. I have more expenses than ever, but I have more cash in the bank than ever, and it's all due to being able to build a manageable business. And one of the things that you may say is like, well, let's build a business that's really diversified. Like I went to CTA and jacked up credit cards to diversify my business, and I like teamed up with all these vendors. Remember, the one good one was Cell Helmet. I sold their liquid glass, and that did help, which is a really, really good product to sell. But the thing with this, we both offered realistically the same services. We both did soldering. We both sold accessories. We both bundled the accessories, trying to get high ticket sales. And we had pretty decent revenue, coming in either way, but we also had too many expenses and nothing was manageable. So the big difference between Ben 1.0 and Ben 2.0 is Ben 1.0 leverages time as a strategy. And the thing with that is you create a base of where time is everything that you base it off of. So you look at the day and you're like, man, I only have 2 hours left. I gotta, be stressed about that. Or, I have 24 hours left. I can be a little more laxed. And pretty soon, your day and your attitude and everything like that is based on the available time versus your ability, versus your value that you have on that time. And then, of course, Ben 2.0 leverage value, over his time as a strategy. And that's, where exactly I am now. And so one thing with this is they asked me to speak today because I run ProFixer, which we have a 90-day mentorship program, and we teach microsoldering. And one of the things that we saw with that early on is bringing people in. Let me ask you, who follows me on Facebook? Is anyone my Facebook friend? Okay, so you've probably seen my post, and I forgot to warn you, I'm not going to tell anyone their business is too complex today. But but yeah, everyone's probably waiting for that one. Yeah. But one of the things that we saw early on is I was like, man, I want to teach microsoldering. I also want to help businesses out and help them kind of. And one of the things that we see is that we would have people come into the program and be like, man, microsoldering, and there were literally little mini versions of it 1.0. Not everyone, but there was a big handful of them, and so we would see that where people come into the business and they're like, man, I need to do microsoldering. And I'm like, nice, let's do it. And so being a virtual program with people for 30 or for 90 days, we would always have a really, we get on 4 Zoom calls a week. And we have a whole lot of things that we do inside our program. But the big thing that would happen was the biggest excuse on why people couldn't get under the scope to actually practice microsoldering was they would name all these other excuses. And I'm like, they sound like this is deja vu. Like, this is kind of terrifying. Like, they're like, man, I stayed till 10 o'clock at night and I still didn't have time. I'm like, okay, this has been 1.0. Like, this is kind of bad. And then even payments would be lapsing and things like that because you do payment plans. But one of the things that we saw early on is that it was very difficult for people to build a leverage microsoldering. And that's what we see a whole lot is there's so many people that have been to solder training and then they get back to their store and they can never really seem to implement it. And the biggest excuse that they make at that point is to say, well, microsoldering is really complex. I'll learn in a year or two. Remember, I was messaging some guy and he's like, yeah, I went to training 2 years ago. I'm like, nice. So what repairs are you offering in the store? He's like, well, I'm still practicing. I'm like, well, but are you offering to a customer? He's like, man, I'm about nailing it. I'm like, what repairs do you do? Audio IC. I'm like, nice, how many you done this week? He's like, well, none really, but I'm practicing a couple. And I'm like, hold on, where's the clarity here? And so I think people, pivot to say it's really complex and that's why I'm not learning it, versus to say my business is in shambles and that's why I can't find time. That's why I can't create the systems in order to leverage microsoldering. Does that make sense as far as, okay. So my criteria here for creating a system, I want to share our base framework for how we are able to implement soldering as a profitable service inside of a business. But my criteria for this is it has to be efficient, has to be repeatable, and it has to be profitable. Those are kind of my 3 criteria before you're going to make a system on anything. And if it doesn't pass this, then you won't waste the time making a system, and you won't even waste any time thinking about it to implement it, because it won't be any of these anyway. Because it's not efficient, you won't be able to implement it, in a proper time frame. So with microsoldering, typically a repair takes about 30 minutes to an hour, including assembly and testing. So for the actual soldering technician, it can take much less, like a PS4 or a PS5 even. Those literally take 5 to 8 minutes once you've mastered the process that we teach. For others, it could take 20, 30 minutes, but even at that point, you're charging $125 for PS4, $250 for a PS5. It's extremely, extremely profitable. All right, so the repeatable aspect of it is the diagnostic steps that you use in order to diagnose are extremely repeatable, and they can be delegated. So the biggest part with that is too many times we have a solder technician where they want to try to do everything themselves because they've never experienced delegating any of this to their team. So in my store, I technically still do the soldering, but I don't do any of the disassembly of the devices. I don't do any of the disassembly or any of the testing of the devices. I literally get a device that has the board pulled and then a little Sharpie dot on where the issue is located at, and it's all from following our diagnostic steps, whether it's a Nintendo Switch, PS4, or an iPhone even. We have pretty thorough diagnostic to take care of on that. All of my time is spent, perhaps chilling with my family or helping other repair shops within our program, delivering that part of it, while the diagnostics are going on these devices. And then profitable, that's a pretty good one. So there's $150 in profit from the repairs. Generally, if you have a really good system, you can start profiting on those repairs, actually with customers paying for them within about 30 days of learning. And then the average that we just pulled our group, and the average student right now that's currently in our program is bringing in $2,750 monthly extra, so pretty cool. So that could be a lot of people's rent. Who here has rent that's that much or less per month? Okay, so probably like quite a bit of people. So interesting thing, Ben 1.0 had rent that was $3,300 a month. That was pretty killer. So what do we want to do as far as this system? So the system that we use in order to delegate these tasks properly is, and one thing I find interesting is here I'm not sharing anything as far as like the tactile part of microsoldering. That's really not that important for this particular example. Of course, you do need to get into the scope and learn the process and do all those things. The biggest part about it is you need to create a proper intake system. The intake system that we use includes scripts for our team to follow. What these are is they give you essentially proper phrases that help the customer to unravel the story on how their device even came to that point in the first place, which they could include, when was the last time you were using your device and it was functioning properly? Like, that's a pretty good one. And then when they say, oh, it was yesterday, and then it stopped, and they say, were you actively using it when you noticed the issue? And they can say yes. It's like, well, when they were using, whenever it stopped and you were using it, what particular app were you in when that happened? It's not important as far as the app goes, but it's important as far as unraveling the system, because they go, actually, I wasn't in an app. I actually pulled it out of my pocket. I was walking through the parking lot to TJ Maxx. And so you kind of get like a little bit different idea as far as what's going on, but it helps them to unravel the story. Checkpoints to be tested with the customer present. So we have a thing that we call 2-tech check. It's what you check with the customer. It's when you check mid-repair and also after post-repair, but it covers about 26 different basic points on the phone itself to get you a pretty good idea while the customer is there. The next thing that we do, this is actually with the device with the technician. So after the customer has dropped off the device, paid for the bench fee, then we go through another checkpoint system to rule out a parts issue. So this is going to be a systematic way in order to have them verify, hey, plug in a charge port, does it work? Unplug the front flex of this Face ID, see if the boot looping stops. Or test a new battery, connect the DT80, record the boot amperage. And a lot of people, they say, I have no idea what the boot amperage is or what even that means. But I can tell you, our technicians in our store have no idea what it means either, but they can write down the numbers they see on the screen, and that's the most important part, is because they just record what exactly they see, and we don't overcomplicate the whole process. And then it's verified by a second technician. You can be busy in a repair shop and you can kind of fly through the device, or perhaps someone's not as trained as well as somebody else. And this can get them some time with the device to be able to verify what's going on, and then a second person can step in and do a quick verification on it. And then the analysis of the data. This is kind of where one of our technicians that has been with us for about 3.5 years, he's doing really well as far as understanding a lot of these key points to kind of decipher, hey, is this audio IC, is this backlight, is this, all those things. And so that is what we do there. But one of the things with this is, even if they don't know, they have all the data collected for you, and it's all been systematic. So we don't leave anything up to guesswork. We didn't say, hey, just go ahead and test the phone. We said, hey, go ahead and use the test flow chart in order to go through that and test and gather the data for me. And that way you can present it to me. That way I can be sitting doing whatever I need to do. I can be out doing whatever and come back in and everything's all tested and good. One of the things that we want to do with that is a system documentation is key to the success of it. You have to document all these things, and don't overcomplicate it. If you're trying to find like a good SOP software or anything like that, I would say stop. Just use Google Drive. You already have it with the Gmail address, and create a Google Doc, and then just add it to a folder, and then save it into the web browser, and then that way your team can utilize that. One of the things that we want to do with that is with any of these SOPs, we want to put a title, a purpose, a setting, step-by-step points, and elaborate each and every single step. Verbal instruction is not a system. And I think I'm cranking out on time. I'm right at time. So
he's looking at me over there.
Okay. I was looking at my counter here. I'm at 27 minutes. So, all right, cool. So I'll wrap this up. And so what does this do? This provides a clear path to testing the devices. And then also it frees up your time. If you train and delegate well, allows you to work on and not in your business, empowers your team to have the devices accurately ready for you to work on. And what does it not do? That's very important. You need to define what the SOPs, define not to do. It doesn't leave it up to someone's ability to remember. That's like the worst thing you can ever do is whenever you try to judge someone's remembering ability. Do not leave everything. It doesn't leave everything up to for them to figure out. It doesn't create a bottleneck, and also doesn't create confusion. And this is important because it leverages systems, and we'll jump through here really quickly to the end. But one of the things that I wanted to take this discussion even further. But this is essentially the system that we run through for maximizing our profits and through simplified systems. But this URL right here, this is a contact form that if anybody wants to go through there, your name and email address, it'll just give me y'all's contact, and then I can reach out, and then we can discuss it further as far as how it's able to be implemented into your business, simplified, and also the way to maximize profits through microsoldering. So,
thank you, Ben.